मिठास, मसाला और अच्छा सब कुछ डाला। आदर्श पॉडकास्ट बनाने के लिए इन चीज़ों को चुना गया था, लेकिन इस रहस्यमय रचना में होस्ट अनुदीप से अनजाने में एक और चीज़ भी गिर गई और वो था केमिकल। दिस इज नॉट व्हाट आई मेंट। Welcome everybody, welcome to another episode of This Is Not What I Meant. I'm Anudeep, your host. This is so much deja vu. But yeah, this is the second part of the Cartoon Network of theories. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff about Cartoon Network, literally. And yeah, pretty excited for this one. So let's do it. I know काफी टाइम लग गया, but here I am. So I thought a lot about how to approach this episode. Like, it was hard to come up with a script that didn't feel like I'm ripping off Wikipedia. I don't want it to come across as that. So during the process of ripping off Wikipedia, the title of these couple of episodes that I'm doing right now just stood out to me, especially the word network. Well, I will be covering some of the theories in this episode and how people have related to the plot and उसको try किया है, मतलब explain करने का कि maybe ऐसा हो सकता है, but मैं बात करने वाली हूँ Cartoon Network, the Cartoon Network के बारे में and some of the creators behind your favorite cartoon shows. So in the previous episode, मजा आ गया ये बोल के, previous episode, like previously on This Is Not What I Meant, आपने सुना अनुदीप को कार्टून्स के बारे में बात करते हुए, which he thought was a good idea कि वो दोबारा रिकॉर्ड करेगी. हाँ जी, तो recap करते हुए, I talked about Tom and Jerry and how it came out in 1940. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, the duo behind the team of Tom and Jerry, went on to make their own production house called Hanna-Barbera Productions after the success of the infamous Kutte Billi, which is wrong because Jerry is a mouse. This is all because of my dad. बीच बीच में हंसी इतनी आती नहीं, सब एडिटिंग में हटाना पड़ता है मेरे को. So, अब आती है बात क्रोनोलॉजी समझने की. तो आप बेटा जी क्रोनोलॉजी समझी कि कैसे क्या हुआ, कार्टून नेटवर्क बना कैसे. So, टॉम एंड जेरी आया 1940 में, Hanna-Barbera Production House 1957 में, and then finally 1994 में, on October 21, Cartoon Network Studios originated as a division of Hanna-Barbera Cartoons Incorporated that focused on producing original programming for Cartoon Network, including but not limited to What a Cartoon! Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, and the Powerpuff Girls. तो ये सब शुरू कैसे हुआ, मतलब it's not just कि they just came up with these individual shows. They did a very unique thing actually, that Cartoon Network, they made a series called What a Cartoon. It was sort of an incubator series for all different kind of premises. So it had standalone 7-minute episodes from different creators, मतलब हर एक episode different creators का, it was the first show produced by the HB Hanna-Barbera, not the HB Pencil. I know that was lame, I'm sorry. And these short films served as the premise for a lot of Cartoon Network shows that followed the release of What a Cartoon. Since individual creators made each episode of this show, Hanna-Barbera basically gave them a chance to showcase their ideas in a 7-minute sketch, which later got picked up to be made into full-fledged series. अब बात ये है कि I could go on to tell you about the cartoons right away, but उसमें इतना मजा नहीं आएगा. तो to know about these creators, how did they come up with these shows, and we people having watched these shows, we never actually have given a second thought about what goes behind a cartoon series. Imagine yourself thinking about making a show, an idea comes to you and you just want it out there in the world. You put in the time, make a story, work with writers, bring your vision into the frame. You're doing it because it's something that you want to visualize and share with people. Bring a perspective to some inanimate thing, tell a complicated emotions, like complicated emotions, singular, a concept to children through your cartoon. How simple it all seems to us when we just watch it on TV. Probably a show that your elder sibling recommended, probably something that you watched because it was all the rage at that time. But it is a legacy for that creator. To think, to think your show has gone global. Children all over the world relating to your characters in different languages, to be a household name like Tom and Jerry seems like a fairy tale and unachievable. But it happens in it, and it happens because of the people like you and me studying, working on projects, observing daily life, who just people who just want to see it happen and they just do it. Craig McCracken, John Dilworth, Van Partible from Cartoon Network, Ron Rudaker from PBS, and of course, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean himself, are just few of the creators that I'll be talking about in this episode of Cartoon Network of Theories, and of course, some fan theories as well. Sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what Craig McCracken came up with when he made an animated short called Whoopass 2, the Whoopass Girls in a sticky situation during his second year at university, California University of Arts. मतलब वो बंदा second year में अपना उसने Powerpuff Girls. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So then he got hired by Cartoon Network to be an art director on one of their shows. While working on What a Cartoon, the animated incubator series that I talked about earlier, he got motivated to speak on Whoopass Girls again, and this series gave him an opportunity to do exactly that, developing it further into a show we now know as the Powerpuff Girls. Yep, I'm not kidding you. The Powerpuff Girls were totally called the Whoopass Girls, and that Chemical X, wo jo shuru mein dalta Professor Utonium, yeah, that was called a can of Whoopass. But naam change karna pada unko because the network people decided that nobody wants to buy a toy with ass written on it. The sale of merchandise is the end game for anyone. You know how absurdly high are the costs of that original merch, and children just, flock to buy them, and then it's bankroll, baby. So उस हिसाब से सोचो, and so today we call them Powerpuff Girls instead of Whoopass. Though in all fairness, they did Whoopass. I love watching Powerpuff Girls, like it's cute, Blossom, Bubbles, Buttercup. An interesting fact about the animation, like obviously you have noticed that they don't really look like humans. I mean, take animation में कोई भी human की तरह नहीं दिखता, but as compared to adults in the show, they're like बड़ी बड़ी आंखें हैं, oval face है उनका. So their oval heads and their like big eyes were inspired by a painter known as Margaret Keane, who used to make figurines with big eyes. Also, Craig wanted them to look more animated, which meant that it was easy to draw them. And there is one scene in the show that they actually acknowledge this fact that they don't have fingers on their hands. So Blossom, Buttercup, and Bubbles. My God, क्यों ना नाम भी मक्खन की तरह मुंह से निकलता है ना, मतलब. Yeah, ये लोग stone paper scissors खेल रहे थे. And so they're like stone paper scissors. And जब फिर हाथ बाहर निकालते हैं अपना, they don't have any fingers. And so Bubbles goes, okay, so who won? I love when they show cartoon characters being sentient of their animated nature. Like, this and fourth wall breaking, I'm just a big fan of it. Like, मेरे को जैसे तैसे तुम ना अपने show में involve करो. Shout out to all the Fleabag fans. Yo. Yeah, so, right, Powerpuff Girls का plot यही है कि 3 लड़कियां हैं, इनकी powers are more than the combined powers of all the superheroes in DC and Marvel. Just, go find inaccuracies in my exaggerations, but these girls have superpowers including fight, superhuman strength, superhuman speed, superhuman senses, superhuman stuff, मतलब ना है ये लोग, ये Superman, ये लोग भाई. So X-ray vision, red heat vision, energy projection, space survivability, thermal resistance, मतलब सारी physics की मतलब mother sister कर देंगे हम okay. And इनकी individual powers तो ओहो मतलब Blossom the red one has ice breath, microscopic vision, lightning bolts, and advanced intelligence. Bubbles, the blue one, वो जो cute सी जो है, exhibits the ability to both understand multiple languages and communicate with various animals. Her unique powers are projecting powerful sonic screams and creating a shockwave of thunder with a single clap from her hands. And finally, Buttercup, the green one, जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा गुस्सा आता रहता है, can spin into a tornado, create fireballs by rubbing her hands together till smokes come out of it, and flaming bomb फेंकती है फिर वो. With these powers, and despite being 4 years old, they fight monsters and villains and protect the metropolitan city called Townsville. मतलब है तो ये लोग 4 साल के ही, so they go through all the stuff that a preschooler has to go through. It's like it could be fighting, I could be fighting giant super villains, but first day of school फिर भी मेरे लिए बहुत nerve wreck होगा. So if I were a Powerpuff girl, मतलब मेरे को यही problem आएगी. But ठीक है 4 साल के बच्चों को प्रॉब्लम क्या आती है? I mean, I talked to my mom and my mom was like, तेरे को स्कूल जाना बहुत पसंद था. Yeah, it was cool. अब तो चलो ठीक है. The only theory that I thought about this show was that कि Samurai Jack वाला बंदा and इनका जो Professor Utonium है, ये दोनों same बंदे हैं. And that's what I thought. But then I went on to the internet and Anudeep wasn't let down. Oh, मतलब एक चीज तो पढ़ के दिमाग ही घूम गया. Like someone just colored this whole show as dark. Theory is that the girls are actually normal kids who pretend to be superheroes. And their dad is probably not even a scientist, but a pharmaceutical banda kyun bol rahi thi? He's a pharmacist who makes medicines in his basement, and that's why बच्चों को नीचे जाना allowed नहीं है. The darker concept is that मोजो जोजो जो शो का primary villain है, हाँ वो बंदर, I'm still gonna say the theory though, is actually the girl's half brother who was sexually interested in them, and that's why he was always out to capture them by hook or crook, and probably why Mojo Jojo सबसे ज़्यादा feared villain है show में. But as I said, they whoop ass, so they whoop ass. Now that Satan-looking guy called him, Him, he's actually the character is named him, is actually their homosexual uncle. And it's not just this theory, a lot of people have picked on him being homosexual. I don't know why. And the reason why उसको devil की तरह look दिया हुआ है is that Utonium is kind of a bigot and intolerant of homosexual people, and that's why he asks the girl to stay away from him. Not fucking intended. Because he's literally called him in the show. Just stay away from him. Yeah, I'm talking about him. The guy, him. Yeah. I'm gonna spiral that later. I'm gonna go into that spiral later. The fan who gave this theory also said that the mayor is probably their grandfather. The show came out on November 18, 1998 and ran for 6 seasons, with the final episode airing in 2005. Cartoon Network की original movie भी इसी के ऊपर based है. Well, Craig McCracken left Powerpuff Girls after 4 seasons to work on his next big project. Guys, this project was pretty close to heart for Craig. In his own words, he's very proud of it. And coincidentally, after the show ended, he left Cartoon Network. मतलब Cartoon Network छोड़ ही दिया ये project करने के बाद. Yep, I'm talking about the Emmy award-winning show. Like, जितने भी shows को मैंने अभी बात कर रही हूँ, none of them won an Emmy except this one. So, yep, I'm talking about Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Let's do this! Now, when I did a poll on my page about what all shows I should cover, Foster's Home wasn't in the top 10. I admit, nahi tha. But I really wanted to do this show, you guys. I wanted you guys to know about it because it's such an awesome show. And for a lot of different reasons, which I'm going to tell you now. So, Like from the plot line to the animation, the characters, मतलब स्टोरी बहुत फ्रेश एंड सोफिस्टिकेटेड है, मतलब उसकी राइटिंग भी. एंड आई एक्चुअली recommend you guys to watch Foster's Home abhi, because it's like no matter your age, this series is like for everyone. And obviously I'm gonna tell you why, right? वरना क्यों सुनोगे तुम लोग मेरे को? The show is set in a world where humans और उनके imaginary friends coexist करते हैं. So there is a kid named Mac, जिसका imaginary friend है Blue. Now Blue is a little blue-colored creature who is like witty, mischievous, and मतलब I'm saying smart, but I will explain to you कि smart कैसे. So Mac is pressured by his mom to leave Blue, saying that कि अब तू बड़ा हो गया, like you're a big kid now and you don't need an imaginary friend. But of course वो ऐसे ही उसको छोड़ देता तो शो कहाँ से बनता. Leaving Blue would mean that he would be admitted into an orphanage managed by Madam Foster, aka aka बोल दिया मैंने, aka Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Roll credits. An orphanage where kids leave their imaginary friends after they've grown over them, and it's run by Madam Foster and her granddaughter Frankie. Also, Madam Foster का जो imaginary friend है, ठीक है, who's a hare named Harriman. Now, Mac setting कर लेता है orphanage के साथ, Frankie के साथ basically, that she'll keep Blue from getting adopted by other kids as long as Mac comes to see him every day after school. What follows from there are mischievous adventures of Blue and Mac and all the eccentric, colorful, I can't emphasize colorful, and wonderfully imagined imaginary friends living at Foster's. Now, the idea for this show came to Craig McCracken when he adopted a dog. Like, he just wanted his dog ki story ka, he just wondered, like, before being adopted, what are his memories, and the fact that he would never know what the dog has experienced. He just wanted to explore that and thus extend this thought to imaginary friends. So I watched this one of the episodes एक दो दिन पहले, and it just refresh हो गया मेरे दिमाग में. Like, after researching about this show and then seeing it again was a very different experience. सारी जो animation इन्होंने की है, that is on Adobe Flash, and like it was the first time animated show, you know, made on Adobe Flash is going to be on TV. And बहुत ही मतलब 60s का psychedelia kind of animation उन्होंने किया है, like with intricate Victorian designing है, and color scheme जो है show की, like even the depth perception जो उन्होंने किया है within the animation, it's very beautiful. Talking about the imaginary characters now, see, so when I said Blue smart, it was because he's very sophisticated in his how should I say, like in his personality. Like, Mac has given him a personality that is unique and individualistic. So let's talk about imaginary friends. Okay, I'm just gonna talk about imaginary friends in reality. Like, have you ever had an imaginary friend, मतलब so छोटे होते हुए, that you would, you know, just start talking to someone you saw on TV and you'd be like, okay, I'm not relating this to my personal experience or anything, but it is very common among kids to make up an imaginary friend to, you know, cope up with things in their lives. So what happens is that something that comes out of your imagination has to be a projection of your personality as well, because it is a manifestation of your personality that is, you know, coming up as your imaginary friend or anything else that you write. Well, each work of art is also, you know, a self-portrait in that sense, if I'm, you know, making any sense with this. So when I talk about Blue, the character in the show, it's kind of like he's like Mac, and you know, they're very analogous to each other. And obviously there would be uski imagination se wo banda aaya hai. So that is what I'm coming towards during this explanation. So baki sare imaginary friends Okay, so it's an orphanage of imaginary friends. So it's sort of like these kids have left a part of them into this orphanage, and you can see different kinds of imaginary friends that they have shown. So there is this character who's very tall, wears a red jersey kind of thing. Like his whole aura is that of a basketball player. So probably the kid was into basketball. Then there is this wacky looking bird kind of character who's not very coherent. So probably a very young kid had imagined him. And then of course there is Harriman, who is the imaginary friend of Madame Foster, and who's like very sophisticated and has a big personality, responsible in his duties. And obviously like Madame Foster is what, like 90 years old, 70, 90 years old. तो उसका उनका imaginary friend would be someone like that. So it's like बहुत ही मतलब you come to think of it as a very deep show. वैसे तो मतलब बच्चों के लिए है that they're not gonna tell about how to be disciplined and like mischievous हरकतें करते हैं वो, and basic जो plot तो चलता ही रहता है show में, that you have to fix stuff, and if you've done a mistake then how would you fix it and stuff like that. But you come to think of it, premise बहुत अच्छा show का, and animation के जैसे बारे में जैसे मैंने बात की तो it's pretty interesting and fun in that sense. So the theory about this show, now इतना psychological मैंने explain किया show के बारे में and how deep it goes. So theory is kind of like something out of a Christopher Nolan movie or one of those movies. You get what I mean, right? जो होता है वो दिखता नहीं, जो दिखता है वो होता नहीं. So theory is that since Frankie, she doesn't have an imaginary friend in the show. अब मैंने जितनी बारी imaginary कहा है, if you guys drink or if you are a water drinking enthusiast, एक glass लेके बैठो, just drink as take a sip whenever I say imaginary. But anyway, Frankie का कोई imaginary friend नहीं है show में, बाकी सबका है but उसका नहीं है. Probably she, like, so क्यों, like how to explain that, and theories revolve around that fact कि उसका imaginary friend नहीं है. So one of the theories that Madame Foster has imagined Frankie as her imaginary friend because show में ये दोनों same similar color scheme के कपड़े पहनते हैं, and it's a purple skirt with a cream colored top. Frances wear a green colored jacket, whereas Madame Foster wears a green color cardigan. So इन दोनों के बीच में रिलेशन ये है कि obviously मेरा ग्रैंड डॉटर वाला रिलेशन के हिसाब से भी कपड़े उनके मैच करे होंगे, but people have made up this theory that so Frankie is an imaginary friend herself. Because why else would a 20-something or teenager kind of a person would be, staying in the foster's home? Like, would she spend all her time managing that orphanage? Like, school नहीं जाती ना वो college जाती है. Why would she do that? Like, so she's an imaginary friend herself. But then there is a flip side of this theory, is that maybe Madame Foster is an imaginary friend herself because she's very like Madame Foster का character, बहुत ही प्यारा character बनाया उन्होंने. She's very quick on her feet and plays along. अगर कोई prank कर रहा है किसी पे, and she's like, she doesn't give a fuck. She's like हाँ मैं तो सब कर लूँगी, and she's like बहुत chill नानी है वो. So yeah, she could be an imaginary friend herself. And Frankie is mourning her death. She is mourning the loss of her grandmother, and उस वजह से she has stayed at the orphanage and not gone to college or school, and she just manages the place for her sake. And that's the story of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I had so much fun to explain that. I should do a next segment kind of thing because I don't have a segue to go to, like, if I'm going to talk about another show. But this was about Craig McCracken, and now we move on to, well, of course, John Dilworth. Courage, the cowardly dog.
इस कार्यक्रम को रोककर हम आपके लिए लाए हैं करेज द कॉमेडी रॉक शो। जिसमें सितारा है करेज, एक डरपोक डॉगी। ये अनजान शहर की गलियों में भटक रहा था। म्यूरियल ने इसे अपने घर में रख लिया। अभी म्यूरियल और इनके पति यूस्टस बैग के साथ यही रहता है। लेकिन अनजान शहर में होता है रोज नया उधम। अब करेज इन हर मुसीबत से छुट्टी दिलाएगा।
ना समझ डॉगी, तुमने मुझे कार्टून बना दिया।
You remember Courage, that little pink ass dog who was the epitome of afraid. This solitary house in middle of nowhere with a wind turbine next to it. In this house lived Muriel and Eustace along with Courage. To refresh your memory about the show, yeah, Eustace had a lean figure and the kind of face कि स्नो फाइट की जो स्टेप मदर थी जब वो बुट्टी बन जाती है ना उसको सेड्यूस करने के लिए कि हाँ तू एप्पल खा ले, वैसी शक्ल, मतलब protruded chin, weird ass nose with pimples on it. So that was Eustace the farmer. Muriel, on the other hand, was not lean, and she used to wear an apron to show that she used to work in the kitchen like a good woman she was. Yep, costumes used for typecasting for the win. She used to wear glasses and had a head full of curly hair. Okay, like before, आगे बढ़ने से पहले मेरा एक question है. Have you guys like ever wondered that the eyes of the character wearing glasses are never visible through the glasses? I know it saves a lot on animation, but मुझे हमेशा से ये लोग ना psychopaths लगते थे, या तो फिर high रहते थे वो लोग, depending on their face expression. Like अगर smile कर रहे हैं तो मस्त हैं, ठीक है, और अगर नहीं कर रहे हैं तो oh my god, what are they thinking? Like pure murder face. Anyway, Muriel wasn't like that, and the premise of the show is enough to confirm this statement. Which is how did Courage end up with Muriel and Eustace in the middle of nowhere in the first place? And yes, unka address is literally in middle of nowhere. Well, it is thought that Muriel found Courage in an empty alleyway. It is important to find courage when you're alone. My god, I can't let go of the puns. Bear with me. She brought the dog home and named him Courage because of how she found him. What followed from there are the adventures, and I'm being kind when I say adventures, of Courage, the cowardly dog, protecting his house and his owners from the invaders or the monster of the week. In spite of his name, Courage got easily frightened, and hence the appropriate, yet even the ironical title, The Cowardly Dog. Understand the play on words with me. Courage means strength in the face of something that frightens you. Cowardly means quite the opposite, and you have to save your own skin. While the dog was a coward, he did have courage to fight the monsters to protect the elderly couple who adopted him, most of the times without them knowing so. Now, if I had a pet who, without my knowledge, protected me from aliens and monsters and invaders, I won't call him cowardly, even though he screams like someone who just saw a cockroach crawl all over their skin. Not a good visual. Yeah, but I won't call that pet cowardly. Created by John Dilworth and produced by his own studio called Stretch Studios, Courage the Cowardly Dog got greenlit for a full-fledged series after the episode The Chicken from the Outer Space in What a Cartoon Incubator series got nominated for an Academy Award. I know trail of thought follow करना थोड़ा मुश्किल है, but The Chicken from Outer Space was an episode in What a Cartoon that I talked about earlier, and so it got greenlit. Okay, so it's gonna be a show. So Dilworth insisted Cartoon Network to outsource the production to his own studio as he worked on the show. Courage came out on, pun unintended, I am really sorry, but Courage came out on November 12th, 1999 and ran for 4 seasons till 2002. It is one of the few horror comedy cartoon shows that I've personally watched, like if we include Codename Kids Next Door to this list. So of course, it's gonna have a lot of wacky theories. This is my favorite part of making this podcast. Courage the Cowardly Dog is actually an ordinary dog in an ordinary house. It's not in the middle of nowhere. The surrounding house and the house are not actually weird and grim in nature, and there are no monsters. I first read this theory in some unbelievable fact kind of Tumblr-ish post. Don't worry if you weren't able to follow that train of thought, मेरे को भी नहीं समझ आया, but that's the best way I can describe it. It read something like, Courage is actually a normal dog and he sees the world through a dog's eyes. All the villains in the show are just normal people, but to a dog they seem scary. They don't actually live in the middle of nowhere, but since the owners are too old to take him outside for walks, he only knows what's around his immediate property, and everything beyond that is nothing because he's never seen it. The place is barren, probably because Muriel and Eustace are poor and they were only able to afford a wooden shack kind of a house for something very cheap. अब ये शो आता था रात को, ठीक है, बहुत लेट आता था, या तो सुबह बहुत जल्दी आता था, लाइक 5 या 4:30 बजे. Basically, the Indian branch of Cartoon Network didn't want us to see the cartoon or something even much better. They must be like, रात को इतनी देर उठना अच्छी बात नहीं होती है. And then अगर तुमने TV on किया, you're gonna see a terrified dog fighting a terrifying monster in a purplish, grim setting. The house that seems to be like never ending, a computer that's very irritating, and the thankless welcome Courage gets from Eustace, जो खुद उससे jealous और irritated रहता है. अब ये सब देखने के बाद तुम्हें नींद आ जाए तो बता देना मुझे, ठीक है? अब तुम जाओ.
1, 2, 3 है baby. बाका कितना स्मार्ट हूं मैं. नाचो मेरे साथ, चलो आओ. Hey there, baby. कोई बात नहीं.
I'll be honest, I didn't like Johnny Bravo growing up, and I haven't watched it that much. But ठीक, अगर मैं ये review कर रही हूँ, I had to watch it to be authentic. Like Amazon Prime has these old cartoon shows, Powerpuff Girls, Dexters, Johnny Bravo. So I made up my mind. Like Anu, this show was among the most watched in the poll you did, so let's watch it. And then I remembered why I didn't like it, but also why people loved it. Johnny Bravo, the titular character, looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger with an Elvis Presley hairstyle, yep, and is a total womanizer. As a kid, I thought he was pretty arrogant, and most of the stuff that happened in the show just went over my head. So when I watched it right now as an adult, I realized, okay, this was supposed to go over my head. I talked about Tom and Jerry. I talked about how Tom and Jerry got a green light to be a kids show in spite of its brutal violence in the episode. And I'm just gonna build on that thought now with a show like Johnny Bravo. The basic premise is that, yeah, he's a womanizer and wants to find a beautiful woman to be with, so of course it's gonna have some adult jokes. I'm just pretty amazed how Van Partible, the creator of the show, got away with it because, but we'll get on that later. Yeah, so in the middle, in one of the episodes that I watched recently, Johnny is watching an advertisement on the TV in which the guy says, you can get exotic, beautiful women from anywhere in the world. Just call at 1-800-LADY. So Johnny calls the number, and they show this huge gift box being shipped to him in an airplane. And it's not like the gift box, cargo में नहीं है. The person being delivered, who is wrapped in this box, and then this box is placed on a seat in an airplane. Okay, so they acknowledge that it's a person who is being delivered, but we'll just wrap her in a gift box, right? Anyway, the order is delivered to Johnny, who is expecting a beautiful, exotic woman to be in it, but to his dismay, he finds a large woman in a frock with two pigtails and a possessive personality, and she's not exotic. He's very dejected, and the episode follows as to how he tries to get rid of her by taking her to a steel cage wrestling match, which he ends up winning. What, like, yeah, towards the end, Johnny admits to the woman that initially he didn't like her, but her being the same size as him and liking the same things he likes is pretty nice. He says that perhaps he doesn't need to be with someone beautiful, but someone like her who's into same things as he is. Oh, she ends that shit, and how? She goes all, "You were nice in the beginning, but now you're being a prick," and walks out of the restaurant with Johnny's friend who finds her beautiful as she is. Admittedly, बहुत अच्छी writing लगी मेरे को वैसे शो की, but I'm reinstating this fact that this is a kid show. Your primary character is a coddled mommy's boy who doesn't respect people. And yeah, he pays for it, but children idealize Johnny Bravo, his swag, his confidence, his ignorance, and so my point is that to have an anti-hero to be the protagonist for your kids' show can be counterproductive, but damn, it is a daring move. And the way Van Partible and Cartoon Network got away with it was because of the fact that this show came out in the 90s. There were only a few channels who had all-day, 24-hour programming on them, Cartoon Network being one of them, realized that this meant censorship of what can be shown in cartoons wasn't very fine-tuned. And hence, in their own words, they made a show with a lot of pop culture references, a lot of adult jokes, and physical comedy, and brought to you Johnny Bravo on July 14, 1997. It ran for 4 seasons, ending in 2004. I'm gonna flip this shit on you guys now. What if Johnny was not an adult, but just a small kid with a sense of grandeur, wanting to be like the guys he sees on the TV? You're thinking about it. Because that explains why his only friend was that neighborhood girl Susie, and why all the women in the show don't pay much attention to his antics, and also why he lives with his mother who calls him everything but Mera Shona Bacha. That's a theory to think about. That's a theory to think about. Alliteration, man. So, super adult referenced super adult referenced show से कुछ complete opposite करते हैं. And let's talk about Dragon Tales.
इनको मिला एक ड्रैगन स्केल, तो शुरू हो गया ड्रैगन टेल. चारों ओर ड्रैगन आ गए, इन और मैक्स तो छा गए. पीठ पर बैठ के ड्रैगन के आएगा मजा अब देखोगे. ड्रैगन टेल्स, आओ चलो हम सुने ड्रैगन टेल्स. आओ मेरे साथ तुम मिलाओ हाथ, चलो चले मिलके ड्रैगन.
मैं चाहूँ दिल से मैं ये चाहूँ ड्रैगन्स के संग उड़कर किसी दूर देश चली जाऊं. I used to be so envious of those little kids, man. बाहर कुछ मजेदार नहीं हो रहा. We'll just rub this stone and get teleported to a land full of dragons and fly with them the whole fucking day. I mean, I know it sounded like it has double meaning, but हम जैसे लोग तो वैसे भी निकाल ही लेते हैं. But Dragon Tales is a PBS show. And PBS didn't do sneaky stuff like Cartoon Network. No. Ron Rodecker, the creator of Dragon Tales, made this show quite some time later. Like, after he was recovering from a coronary graft surgery. He used to draw dragons while recovering because they represented to him forces of nature that are out of his control. That is such a beautiful thought. And he used to do that. Like, he made the characters back in 1978, but the show was produced in 1995, and he made even a more beautiful show based on his characters as Dragon Tales. So, the show is based on Emmy and Max, two 6 and 4-year-old siblings who have this dragon stone that, when rubbed like the lamp in Aladdin, took them away to a land of dragons. They also had to sing before they could be transported, and that's the most memorable thing that from the show. That's the most memorable thing I remember from the show. That whole ritual was iconic AF. And I realized ये show 4 साल के बच्चों के लिए है, but iconic है तो है. Now, PBS had clear goals of what they wanted to do with this show when it was released back in September 1999. As stated on the official Dragon Tales website, Dragon Tales has 3 primary educational goals. They are to encourage children to take on new or difficult challenges in their lives, to help children recognize that there is more than one way to approach a challenge, and lastly, to help children understand that to try and not succeed fully is a valuable and natural part of learning. Yeah, that pretty much covered it. And the show does it too, from underlining emotions like jealousy and to how to be a good team member. The series is full of moral lessons. You know how they show in movies and TV shows a person going to a counselor or a therapist? There are mental health issues, and then there is also a moral conflict that they face. And as they start talking, the therapist guides the conversation to their childhood and handpicks up a fucked up memory to show you how this particular incident in your life ages ago has now manifested itself today, and you need to face how you felt then at the root of your issue. Get closure on it, and then you can overcome whatever problem you have today. And so, to avoid all of that, make your kids watch Dragon Tales. I don't have a theory on this. I really don't have a theory on this. Except the fact that they probably were fed up of their parents. The fact that they probably were fed up of their parents and found this dragon stone in their secret stash of drugs. And it's probably their psychedelia that's full of dragons. And then they end up feeling better about themselves after they've rubbed it. Speaking of people being high, saving the best for the last. Rowan Atkinson and Richard Curtis's Mr. Bean is that character, man. I mean, as a big fan I am of writing, I absolutely love expressionistic comedy, and Mr. Bean is, just encapsulate that whole Charlie Chaplin silent comedy era. Mr. Bean is a British sitcom that marked the starting of the decade quite literally, since it came out on 1st January 1990. I'm talking about the show starring Rowan Atkinson as himself. I said Rowan Atkinson as himself. He's not Mr. Bean, but he's like, you think about Rowan Atkinson and you're like, yeah, you're Mr. Bean, yeah. I mean, you somehow, just, it's sort of like Daniel Radcliffe saying that he's Harry Potter. Ye banda to Harry Potter, yeah. So, even though it only has 15 episodes, it is still iconic. Like, this is the thing with British television. They don't make a lot of seasons for a show. It's amazing and agonizing at the same time. Like, you want more of it, but the fact that there isn't makes it, like, delicious and fabulous. The animated series, Mr. Bean, the animated series, is based on Mr. Bean, the live action, and it came out in 2002. And of all the shows that I've talked about in this episode of my podcast, it is still running. Mr. Bean is still running. There are 3 seasons. First came out in 2002, ran till 2004. The second came out in 2015. ended in 2016, and the third season came out in April 2019. The writing is brilliant. Mr. Bean ki, like, you have Mr. Bean, who's this awkward character wearing a brown suit and a red tie. He has a little teddy bear who he treats with utmost sincerity as he would a baby or a pet. He has a parrot green car with a black hood. He doesn't talk much, but somehow he's able to convey what he's thinking, and for the sake of comedic timing, he's not able to convey what he's thinking. I mean, could this man be any more awesome? See what I did there? मतलब Rowan Atkinson's portrayal तो है ही timeless. In the show, and both the movies, but the animated series was amazing as well. Like the music, the softer tones for the background objects. Okay, yeah, that is something that I like very much. I found it pretty tasty. Don't throw rocks at me, okay? I mean, it's just nice. I feel like I'm running out of adjectives, so I'll circle back to the plot. The show is based on Mr. Bean, a guy in his mid-30s living alone with his teddy bear, and him struggling with basic stuff people do, and coming up with genuine and different ways of doing normal stuff. Be it watching TV, fixing up a couch, जिसके spring बाहर आ चुके हैं, which leads him to being in a junkyard. Going to watch Titanic and उसको फिर parking नहीं मिल रही, so I'll just spend all my day looking for a parking space, and it will be like that saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. The theories are equally weird and awesome for this extraordinarily ordinary show. Come to think of it, Mr. Bean is kind of like Ford Prefect from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, an alien who is pretending to be a human. And yes, I will not stop talking about that book. Sue me. In the live action series, there is a scene where Mr. Bean is dropped from the sky from a UFO looking spotlight over him, which fuels this assumption that he's an alien. Not to mention that he wears the same clothes, acts weird and eccentric. But then again, if you're like me, who spent the entire year sitting on their bed, streaming shows and listening to music and pretending to work from home, wearing the same hoodie, t-shirt, then we're all aliens, right? And I need the mothership to pick me up now, only over Earth. There's another theory that he was a normal person, had a job, socialized. We do know that he has a girlfriend, yep. But he was abducted by aliens and they tested on him, so it messed up with his head. And after they've done what they needed to do with him, they released him back on the earth. And so now he's weird and has trouble doing normal things. That also explains why he has spending money, a car, a house already, right? Back in 1997, Rowan Atkinson gave his fans, a hint about his character's origins in an interview with the Buffalo News. So he talked about an episode जो उन्होंने बनाया नहीं, but उन्होंने उसके बारे में सोचा था कि कैसा होगा वो. He says that Mr. Bean sees this spaceship landing in a field and he stops the car. He looks up and suddenly the door lowers and this bright light comes out of the spaceship. And Mr. Bean walks out of the spaceship. And then another Mr. Bean walks. And they all shake hands, and then 25 more Mr. Beans all come out of the spaceship and pat him on the back and say, "Very nice to meet you." And then all the Mr. Beans go up into the spaceship and the doors go up, and that's the end of Mr. Bean. Guys, that was it. That wraps it up for this part of Cartoon Network of Theories. I took some time to make this one because as I kept reading it, it just became more fun. And if you call geeking out fun, then yes, I know it was fun. Shut up. Well, I do hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did making it. And if you made it to the end, I am so happy and grateful, and I hope the deity that you believe in blesses you. And if you don't, then I'm just thankful to you. I did. That was a lot of info I'm thinking out loud on my part. I'll pat myself on the back. Yep, and yeah, so cartoons were a big part of my childhood. That's why I did it. And like, life is not that vibrant or colorful in a literal sense. Like, emotions may color you red or blue, but the world doesn't change with it. And so it is great to see that sense of inner chaos on the outside. And yeah, even the voice in my head is saying, stop talking. Yeah, keep listening to This Is Not What I Meant. I'm Anudeep, and thank you.